So my name's Heidi Holtan, and I work for KAXE. It's Northern Community Radio. We're based out of Grand Rapids, and we are a public community radio station, which means that the way that we stay on the air is by basically asking people for money and to be members of the station and to do that once a year. And the station's been around for almost 33 years now. And it's a public radio station in that we get most of our funding from the people who, become members of the station. But we're a community station, which also means that probably 70% of the people that you hear on our airwaves are people who are just volunteers, who have come in and been trained, and they do programming. They're generally doing music programs. So they're putting together their favorite music, and they're, giving weather reports and talking about what's going on in the community, stuff that we do. The bulk of our programming is, you'd probably say, is music programming. But we also run national news, and we do morning community affairs and interviews, and a lot about the world where we live, the nature, what's happening outside your window, and kind of trying to get people more connected to the environment where they live, and get to kind of know the culture of northern Minnesota, what it means to live here. Our mission is actually to build community, and so while we'd love to be a hugely money-making entity, we really just need to pay the bills. We're trying to build community through radio. Northern Community Radio owns KAXE. It's one of the branches is KAXE. So when the founders started, they made our mission broad enough to incorporate what might happen in the future, whether that was going to be TV, something computer-wise, or, they just wanted to leave that open so that there's kind of this parent company, which is what our board of directors is, but maybe at some point we'd either have more radio stations or we'd have video or internet, which is happening now. So it's much more than radio, but that's really the heart of what we do and most of what we do. I see radio as being one of the most vital forms of communication we have, and it's old-fashioned. People use it differently. People don't make appointments anymore to listen to a show at a certain time, so we have to be aware of that and figure out other ways to get that content to them, and maybe change some of our decisions that we've made in the past about when something is on or how something is on, or we need to look at that, how people get it. But I think you're not going to get away from the fact that people are in their cars in the morning to go to work and in their cars in the afternoon to go home, and they want something there that stimulates them in some way.
And how did you first get interested?
I was a listener, and that's what most people, the really cool thing about our station is that most people were volunteers before they started working there. And what I love about where I work and the people that I get to meet through this is that everyone is so passionate about whatever they might be doing, passionate about where they live, the culture where we live. And so the people, I started out as a volunteer. I always explain this story because I'm an introverted person. I'm fairly shy. And I was listening to KAXE, absolutely loved it. I'd lived in the Twin Cities for about 10 years and moved back to Brainerd, was working for my parents, and found this radio station, absolutely loved it. Loved that they were playing this music that was so, I'd never heard a lot of the music. And usually when you turn on a radio station, you've heard every song 10 million times before. So I liked that I was learning things, and I learned so much about the community. So at the time I was listening to it, and I would hear them talk and say, so-and-so's a volunteer. It was hard to believe that just anyone could do a radio show. I went, and I was afraid, and I thought, I'm going to go through some training, but I'm not going to ever go on the air. And it was scary. It was scary at first, but there was something about it that I absolutely loved, about being, I'd always kind of tried to volunteer with organizations and had some fun, some good experiences, but never clicked into a volunteer experience that really changed me. And this did. Most people who volunteer at the station do music programs, and that's what I started doing. But at the time I was freelance writing. I was publishing my own little zine. I was asking for people to send me their writing and publishing it and doing some stuff in the schools with that, and got a little grant to do it. And I called that Real Good Words. I read a lot. I really like books. And then I don't know, I kind of pushed for it. And so my first thing I really did for KXU was create this show. And it started half an hour once a month. And then it went half an hour once a week. And then now it's an hour once a week, but it's rebroadcast Sunday mornings as well. So I interview authors. It started out differently than I thought it was going to be, the show. I mean, it's an interesting process of what you think something's going to be, and you have to let it kind of become something else. I envisioned a book club on the air where people would read the book, we'd talk to the author, and people would call in and be a part of that. And as it turns out, when I thought about that, I would never do that as a listener. No one has time to read books and to actively engage in books, you know? I mean, they read them, but it's a tough thing. It's a tough sell. So I thought, well, what do I care if someone reads this book? I mean, I want to have conversations with authors about art, about writing, about stories, and what moves them. So I changed the focus of it because I thought it's not my job to sell books. It's my job to have an interesting conversation. I get to talk to, you know, local authors, regional authors, nationwide best-selling, New York Times best-selling authors. And I'm amazed by how few outlets there are where people actually just get to talk. They're used to the set questions. And when I talk with an author, we have a nice little conversation, you know, and we end up talking about things they don't know they're going to talk about. I mean, it's not any sort of necessarily a probing thing, but by nature of it being community radio and public radio, I have the time. I'm not trying to sell a product. I have more than a soundbite. My interviews are usually from 15 minutes to a half an hour with an author, sometimes even a little bit longer. People started to get wind of what I was doing, and there really aren't a lot of avenues for authors to talk about their work in media at all. I mean, you don't see a lot of authors on TV, really, and in radio, too. I mean, it's definitely commercial radio. You don't hear many authors, and even in public radio, you hear some stuff, but it's generally nonfiction about certain topics when you're hearing from authors on national public radio or that kind of thing. So once some of the big publishers, you know, in New York got wind of, you know, that there's this show, you just kind of get on these lists, and I'm sent, I mean, every day is like Christmas, because I have about 6 books probably sent to me every day that I get to open up and see if I like. And it's easier, you know, technology has helped me too. It's easier. Most authors are online. Most authors are communicating directly with their readers now. That works better for them, you know, because there aren't a lot of media outlets that talk to them. So they're more than happy to talk to me. I send them an email, and they usually write back right away and say, great, and we work out a phone interview. You know, I rarely do in-person interviews. It's mostly phone because they're from all other parts of the country, and of course we have no budget for anything like that. But yeah, it's been great. It's funny because that's one of the questions people ask me all the time. How do you get all these authors? And I'll, you know, and I don't mean to be bragging, but I'm like, well, they ask me, you know. It's not the other way around. So what we do when people come in and are volunteers and they are learning what to do, one of the things be yourself. We really don't want someone to come in and be a DJ, you know, and have a DJ voice. Our little tagline is authentic local radio. And so we want people to be themselves, you know, and because that's what you relate to. So if you tell a real story about your life, it's going to connect, you know, to somebody.